This is the most important Toyota in decades. It's the new Toyota bZ4X fully electric SUV. It comes with two different versions available in Australia, some pretty assertive pricing, lots of standard equipment, and plenty of space on the inside of the car as well. I'm going to tell you all about it in this review, including some ownership stuff that you really need to know about. So let's get to it. Please subscribe. Let's go. The bZ4X has two different models available in the range. The entry-level front-wheel drive model, which is $66,000 before on-road costs, or the much more expensive but much more richly specified all-wheel drive version, which is this one here, which is $74,900 before on-road costs. So it sort of splits the difference against the likes of the Model Y, for instance, and it seems like pretty good value for money considering what you get as standard, which includes things like LED lighting, headlights and daytime running lights and tail lights, that is. You've also got 20-inch wheels as standard across both variants, and you've also got keyless entry, push button start. You've got a 12.3-inch touchscreen media system with wired and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There's sat-nav as well. You've also got a 7-inch digital instrument cluster for the driver, and you've also got cloth trim in the entry-level versions with electric driver's seat adjustment, heated front seats, and a few other nice features besides that. But if you step up to that all-wheel drive version, you do get a few more features which you might appreciate, including a wireless charger, a JBL 9-speaker sound system. You also get cooled front seats, a heated steering wheel, driver's seat memory settings. So it does seem to make a fair bit more sense. Plus you get all-wheel drive driving modes and the extra capability that comes with that. It sits a lot higher, the all-wheel drive model as well, with better ground clearance. So if you are going to be adventuring in your electric SUV, it could be the better choice for you. But if you're not feeling that adventurous when it comes to actually buying a car like this, an electric car with all the unknowns that come with the depreciation and the user experience and all that, you can sign up to a 3-year lease, a full service lease from Toyota, which is being offered for the bZ4X. It includes things like the use of the car for the 3-year period and a set number of kilometers depending on your circumstances. And you get things like your tires covered, your registration is covered, comprehensive insurance and compulsory third-party insurance, and maintenance as well. So if you aren't ready to roll the dice completely on an EV, that choice of owning one rather than buying and owning one and keeping one at the end could be a good choice for you. Just keep in mind that if you do the full service lease, the car remains property of Toyota Australia, so you'll have to hand it back after 3 years or release or choose something else. So that might make sense for you. I don't know. It seems like a pretty expensive way to own a car, but tell me what you think in the comments. Or would you choose one of these alternatives? Look, there are some obvious alternatives to the bZ4X, namely the Tesla Model Y. It's the one that comes to mind. It's the one that people default to when they're looking for a mid-size electric SUV, and with good reason. It's a really good thing. It's pretty well priced. It has heaps of standard equipment, and it has heaps and heaps of space as well. Make sure you check out my detailed review, link in the description, and you can see for yourself just how much room that SUV has. Another alternative to this is, well, the car that it shares a lot with. It's the Subaru Solterra. It's all-wheel drive only, so if you are after all-wheel drive and you're looking for maybe a slightly more affordable price point, it could be a really good choice for you. Lots of standard spec as well, very, very similar in terms of the interior and the treatment here, but hey, I reckon that it stands up if you are willing to go with the Subaru instead of the Toyota all-wheel drive, because there is a more assertive starting price for an all-wheel drive Solterra. There's also some other really great alternatives from Korea, the likes of the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and also the Kia EV6 spring to mind. Similar sort of money, not necessarily exactly the same kind of pricing, but hey, I reckon that those two really do stack up from a value perspective and from a driving perspective as well. So which would you pick? Would you pick something different? The bZ4X is about 4.7 meters long, so it's pretty conventional in terms of the size, although if you are looking for a 3-row vehicle, a 7-seater, you will need to shop elsewhere because this one is strictly a 5-seater, and it does have a fair amount of space. I'll show you inside in a minute, but I reckon it looks really good. Tell me what you think about these exposed plasticky bits though, and 20-inch wheels are standard, might be too big for some. Also, I'll just point out, no rear wiper, despite the fact that that is quite a big back glass section. But hey, let's check out the boot and see if it's big enough. Both versions of the bZ4X do come with an electric tailgate. It's a little bit slow. Like I said, the top spec one comes with the kick function, so you can open it hands-free if you need to. And the boot space itself is actually pretty good. Now, the numbers don't suggest that it is as good as the usability of this boot is probably actually going to be in reality, because it does have a pretty flat load lip and it's also a pretty wide opening. So putting bigger items in and out is going to be pretty simple. If you've got prams that you're always hauling around with you, it could be a pretty handy family hauler. Now, there is a difference between the front wheel drive versions and the all-wheel drive versions when it comes to boot capacity. You'll see the numbers on your screen now, but I still think either way you're getting a practical enough boot if you're okay with missing out on a tyre underneath the floor, because there is no spare. You've just got a cargo cover storage section and a tyre repair kit underneath there. That might be fine for you, just depends on your situation and circumstances. But there's also some pretty handy stuff, including these drop down hooks on both sides of the boot. You've got a light in there as well, that cargo cover if you need it too. So I reckon that it does stack up pretty well, and don't let the numbers fool you. This is going to be a pretty practical family SUV. Okay, so what's the interior like? Well, you're going to have to get used to the driving position. That's the main thing when it comes to the cabin of this car, because it's kind of like a Peugeot in the way that you look over the steering wheel at the instrument cluster, but the steering wheel here is not quite as small as a Peugeot, so it can actually get in the way of me being in the ideal driving position for my liking. So if you're a bigger person, you might find that it's not that comfortable, or a smaller person as well, because I don't think it's ideal. But hey, maybe that's why they offer that yoke version of the steering wheel in other markets. We don't get that here. Maybe we will at some point, but steering wheel controls as well do take some learning. There's a lot of buttons here, and it kind of looks like they should almost be like one of those old Citroen with the hub-centric sort of steering wheel setup, so the buttons stay there but the wheel moves, but it doesn't. It all moves together, so it can take just a little bit of getting used to, and I'm sure you will get used to it, but it's just something to keep in mind. You might sit straight in this car and go, nah, not for me, or you might sit in and go, this is cool, I like it. But what is cool about it is that it does still have some physical controls. So you've got trigger switches here for your temperature and your fan speed, and there's a bunch of other touch sensitive controls here as well, like for your seat cooling, for instance, and your demisters and that sort of thing. So it's a mix of physical and sort of semi-physical, I guess. You've also got volume buttons here if you want to adjust the volume. There's also a volume trigger over here as well. So that combined with this big 12.3-inch touchscreen media system, it's all pretty easy to get your head around for the most part, although I will still say that I've criticized the software in other Toyota and Lexus products with this newer system. It's just not as simple as it could be in terms of the menu structure and like making adjustments to, say, the sound quality or the sound bass or treble or whatever you need to do. It's just a bit fiddlier than it should be. So if you are the sort of person who just sets things up and then plugs in their phone or has wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto running, then it might not be a big deal for you. But I do find that when you are trying to figure something out on the screen, you might require a little bit more thought than otherwise would be necessary. Now, there are some buttons here as well. So you've got your X mode button for the all-wheel drive system and the crawl button there as well. An auto parking thing that you've also got in this high-spec version. I never use auto parking. And a single pedal driving mode button, which is good. And I'll tell you about that in the driving section shortly. You've also got a electronic park brake, and your gear selector is a rotary dial with a push button park button as well. Now, behind there, you've got this covered center bin, which in this spec has a wireless phone charger. In the base grade, it doesn't. The USB-A port in there as well. You've got another big storage section down below this bridge with two USB-C ports and also a 12-volt port. It's a good storage tray down there. You've got big bottle holders or cup holders between the seats, and you can slide this armrest forwards and backwards. And it also opens up to allow a bit more storage if you need it. So it is a pretty practical cabin. You've got big bottle holders in the doors as well. Let me know if you like this light trim or if you'd prefer the black SoftX trim, which is also available. I actually like this light trim. I think it looks pretty cool, but I'm worried that it might get very dirty very easily. Maybe I'll have to do a test on that one day. I like this dashboard cloth finish as well. It's pretty nice. Black headliner, not so much. You know how I feel about those if you've seen any of my other videos anyway. Now, let's check out the back seat space, see if it's big enough. Before I show you the back seat, I just want to show you this. The doors don't open very wide. That's a bit of a Toyota trait. It's a bit annoying. If you're loading in something that's small and very noisy and sometimes smelly, you might find that, well, that's not the ideal amount of space. Thankfully, the door openings are quite large. Now, let me show you the back seat. It's large too. Right, look how much space I have in front of my legs in the back seat of this car. This seat is set for my 182 centimeter or 6 foot tall driving frame. And yeah, I've got heaps of knee room, but you'll see that my knees are in a very knees up position, and that is a pretty common trait with EVs because they have the battery pack sandwiched underneath the body of the car. It means that you sort of tend to have your feet sitting a little bit higher up, so your knees aren't necessarily as comfortable as they might otherwise be. I guess you can just lounge, which is another option. And foot space is a little bit tight as well if you do need to stretch out. Headroom, yeah, look, I'm 182 centimeters, like I said, and yeah, it's a little bit tight. If you're like 6'3", 6'4", you're gonna find it pretty tight back here, I would say. And it is still very wide though, and it's got a flat floor, so you can fit 3 adults across the back if you need to. Or if you've got kids, there are ISOFIX points and 3 top tether points as well. Reclinable seat backs too, which is pretty handy. You've got a flip down armrest with some cup holders and a storage tray as well. Directional air vents, couple of USB-C ports. So it does tick a lot of the boxes that you would expect of a car at this price point. You've got map pockets on both seat backs, bottle holders in the doors. Yeah, this could make a really comfortable and likable family car, I reckon. There are 2 different powertrain options if you're looking at the bZ4X. So the entry-level model is a front-wheel drive. It's got an electric motor at the front axle. You'll see the outputs for it on your screen now. Those are pretty punchy. It's a pretty enjoyable drive in the front-wheel drive model. But if you need or want the extra sure-footedness of all-wheel drive, you can choose the twin-motor version, which is this one here. You'll see the outputs for it on your screen now. And they are both relatively speedy, not necessarily super-duper performance-focused, but they are fast enough to give you your EV thrills. So what about the other side of the EV equation, range and charging? All right, let's talk charging. Your charge port is here above the passenger side front tyre, and you do have a Type 2 combination plug for this 71.4 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is shared across the front wheel drive and all wheel drive models. You've got a maximum AC charging rate of 11 kilowatts, which is actually pretty good. Most others in this segment are a bit more limited than that, but you will need 3-phase power at home in order to be able to achieve the claimed charge time in about 7 hours for a full charge at 11 kilowatts. Now there's also DC charging, of course, 150 kilowatt maximum rate for the DC charging. So it's not necessarily as quick as some of the other vehicles out there when it comes to fast charging. 10 to 80% charge is going to take around 30 minutes according to Toyota. And it's limited by the fact that it is running a 400 volt architecture. So it's not necessarily as lightning fast to recharge, but that might not matter to you if you have a good charging setup at home. There are 2 different levels of EV driving range available to you if you are considering a bZ4X. So I'll show you the front wheel drive figure on the screen now. That's the WLTP claimed range for it. And the all wheel drive one is on your screen now. And I think, well, would you sacrifice the extra range to have all wheel drive? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. If you're buying a Toyota electric SUV, you're probably someone who hasn't considered a Tesla or one of those other rivals I've mentioned. In fact, you're probably a Toyota person through and through. And in that circumstance, if that's you, you're going to be very pleased because this lives up to the Toyota mentality when it comes to a new model. It's very good to drive, very easy to live with, and also not offensive in any particular way. That's not to say that it's perfect, but it does have some really nice qualities in terms of the drive experience. Look, this one here is the all-wheel drive. It's the punchy one, and it does boogie. It gets up and moves. It's not necessarily lightning fast. It doesn't do the full throw you back in your seat, but it's fast enough for a Toyota driver's needs. That's not a blight against Toyota or anyone who's bought a Toyota either. The brand has made some bloody fantastic vehicles over the last few years. And look, this car stacks up from a lot of different perspectives, but it's not necessarily compelling in any particular way. Sure, if you like going fast through corners, it handles really well. And the steering is also kind of peculiar in that it's very direct, just like a Tesla Model Y. It changes direction really quickly, whether you're in the front wheel drive or all wheel drive version of this SUV. So look, from the handling perspective, it's good. And when it comes to the ride, it's mostly good. It can be a little bit lumpy and bumpy on some surfaces because it's got 20-inch wheels and it's quite a heavy car. You can feel the body sort of moving around rather than cushioning the bumps. So it might not be to all tastes, but it's also not unfamiliar from other EV drive experiences. They all tend to be a little bit firmer because they're so much stiffer through the body to support all the weight of the battery pack, and a lot of them have big wheels as well. And it's also very livable in day-to-day situations. We're here in Canberra where the launch is being held, and I've driven it across a mix of different scenarios: urban, highway, freeway, some gravel roads, and even off-road. If you want to check out that shorts video, make sure you hit the link at the top of the screen or it's in the description, and you might find that this car does have a few more off-road chops than you were expecting. The road noise is relatively hushed. There's a bit of wind noise around the top of the B-pillar, I think it is. Sort of gets a bit rushy sounding when you're doing 100 k's an hour on the freeway or highway. So that might be something you want to keep in mind, but maybe it's exacerbated by the fact that otherwise it's a pretty silent car, as a lot of EVs are. Now, if you're new to EVs or you just don't really like the feeling of the single pedal driving mode where you don't actually need to use the brakes as much, then there is a conventional driving mode, which I'm doing right now, where the car will just drive just like pretty much any other car. But if you hit the button down here that does put it into the single pedal mode, it will use the regen brakes to their best effect and hopefully add as much battery range back into the battery pack as possible. And look, it doesn't come to a complete stop. In my testing that I've done here, I managed to get it down to 5 k's an hour in traffic, which I think is enough for most people's needs. And it's not the most assertive single pedal driving mode either, so it won't make you feel motion sick. I'll also add that the bZ4X doesn't necessarily have the most intrusive safety features, which is good. The driver monitoring camera doesn't annoy you too much, and nor does the speed sign recognition system or the lane keeping. It's all pretty handy. And I reckon, honestly, the drive experience stacks up pretty well. Like I said, nothing necessarily compelling, nothing necessarily groundbreaking about it, but it's fine, and that's fine. Okay, let's talk about efficiency. These will be the WLTP rated efficiency numbers, so the combined cycle figure, what you should be able to achieve across a mix of different driving scenarios. And on your screen, you'll see the front wheel drive model, which does seem pretty good for a single motor EV of this size. And now you'll see the all-wheel drive figure. And those numbers seem really good, although you might see Toyota advertising the NEDC figures, which are even more impressive, but they're less realistic. Now, on test, I drove both the front wheel drive and the all-wheel drive across a mix of scenarios, and you'll see the ratings I saw for both powertrains on your screen now, and for the most part, that's pretty good, I think. It's not necessarily groundbreaking, but hey, a lot of the drive experience isn't when it comes to the bZ4X. It's middle ground. Middle ground is good. This car achieved the maximum 5-star ANCAP safety rating back in 2022. That was based on Euro NCAP testing because this car launched a couple of years ago, but this version is updated, even though it still has a fairly extensive list of standard safety equipment, including autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian, cyclist, and junction detection. There's lane keeping assistance and emergency lane keep as well. You've also got adaptive cruise control, a reversing camera, and front and rear parking sensors on that entry-level front-wheel drive model. But if you choose the all-wheel drive, you get things like blind spot monitoring and a surround view camera system, which I think is advantageous in a lot of ways, and also a safe exit assist feature. So if you open your door or try to open your door and something's coming, it'll stop you from doing that. And I think that those features really should be standard on the entry-level grade as well. Maybe the price could have been 67 instead of 66 if that was the case. But I'm not a product planner. Maybe I should be. You tell me. Now, there's also 7 airbags fitted to this car. There's dual front side, a front center, and also full-length curtain coverage. Pretty good. Toyota Australia offers a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty for its model range, including the bZ4X, but keep in mind that it also has the available 7-year powertrain warranty if you do maintain logbook servicing. And there's also an applicable 10-year battery warranty if you make sure that you service it with Toyota and get the battery health checked every single year. Now that means service intervals are 12 months and 15,000 Ks, and there's a cap price servicing plan for the first 5 years of 75,000 Ks, with service prices at $180 per visit, which is very affordable. And also Toyota guarantees that there will be 70% state of health for the battery pack after 8 years. So there you have it, an electric car that happens to be a Toyota, and it does things in a very Toyota way. I don't think that it's necessarily compelling in any particular way, this car, but it does offer a really nice all-round package. Tell me what you think in the comments section below. Would you pick a bZ4X or the Solterra or one of its other rivals? I'd love to hear from you, and if you haven't already, please subscribe, it helps a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.